Hello, welcome back to Algebra 1. We're continuing to talk about variables. What if we had something that looked like 6.5, the fraction 6.5, minus the variable y is equal to 3 times 2. Now remember, here in algebra we do multiplication. We can write it several ways. One of the ways we do it is with a dot. That means 3 times 2 on the right-hand side. So we have 6.5 minus some number, we don't know what it is, so we call it y, is equal to 3 times 2. So how do you solve something like this? Well, first we just kind of simplify it a little bit. We say, all right, this is 6.5 right here, minus some unknown variable y, it's a placeholder. And on the right-hand side, what does this 3 times 2 equal? Right? Well, that's going to equal 6. So what you really have is you have 6.5 minus some number is equal to 6. And there's only one number in here that's going to work. If you take 6.5 pencils and subtract something from it, the only way you can get 6 is if y is equal to 1/2. Make sure you understand that. So you stick y in here, 6.5 minus a half is going to equal 6. So this is the only value of the variable y that's going to work. So we'll put a little bracket around it. That's going to be our final answer. All right. Now what if we have something like a, the variable a, times the variable a, because you can take variables and multiply it by itself, no problem. And that's going to equal on the right-hand side 2 times a. What is going to work here? Right? So some of these things, like this first one that we did, this was pretty easy. 6.5 minus some number. We're just trying to figure out what this is. And so you can kind of look at it and you know that it's 1/2. This one is a little bit more difficult. Sometimes you look at these things and you can't really see what is the value of a, such that when I put it over here, multiply it by itself is the same thing as 2 times a. So my advice is if you don't know what the answer is, you start guessing. Basically, you start guessing here because we're in the beginning stages of algebra. I haven't taught you how to solve equations yet. We're just kind of guessing and we're validating that the value of a here is correct. So let's just take a couple of values of a. Let's say a is equal to 0. Does this satisfy this equation? If a is equal to 0, what is going to happen? Then on the left-hand side of this equation, this side right here, what's going to happen is you're going to have 0 times 0. And on the right-hand side of the equation, you have this 2 times a right here. So it'll be 2 times 0. So on the left-hand side, you'll have 0, and on the right-hand side, you'll have 0. And since the left and the right-hand side are the same on both sides like this, then we say that this value of a satisfies this equation. So this is a valid value of a. But the interesting thing about this problem is sometimes for problems like this, you can have more than one value of a that actually works in both sides. So let's continue on and just see if we can find one. What if a, let's see if a is equal to 1, what happens? Well, on the left-hand side, you have a times a, so you'll have 1 times 1 on the left-hand side of the equal sign. On the right-hand side, you'll have 2 times 1 if a is equal to 1. So on the left, 1 times 1 is 1, and on the right, 2 times 1 is 2. So we can't leave this equal sign here. We put a slash through it like this, and what this basically means is not equals. It means 1 is not equal to 2. And that means that this value of a does not work for this equation. It's not a solution that satisfies this equation because it doesn't make both sides of the equal sign equal. So we're not going to circle this as the answer. In fact, just to make it clear, I'm just going to kind of put a little cross through it. The value a is equal to 1 is not a valid answer. But let's go on here and just continue picking a couple more numbers and see what we can find. What if a is equal to 2? What if a is equal to 2? What's going to happen there? Then what you're going to have is on the left-hand side, it's a times a, right? So on the left-hand side, what you will have is 2 times 2. And on the right-hand side, what we're going to have is 2 times a. So again, we're going to have 2 times 2 because a is 2. So what you'll have is 4 is equal to 4. And this works since the left and the right-hand side are indeed the same. This value of a also works. So I'm just kind of pointing out here that this equation over here, the first one, there was only one value of y that works. 6.5 minus 1/2, that's the only number that works, is going to give you 6. But because here we have the variables multiplied by each other like this, you can have cases where here's a value of a that works, and here's another value of a that works. And as we get deeper into algebra, you'll understand how to predict when you're going to have more than one answer. Here we're just trying to validate that these answers work. All right, so now what we want to do is let's scroll up the page here. Let's move this up here, and we will continue on by solving just a couple of other quick problems to make sure we understand. What if we have something like, I'll open a parentheses and I'll talk about that in just a second. B times B, some variable B times B plus the number 3 is equal to 4 times B. Now before we actually solve this, let's talk about a couple of quick things. First of all, we have B times B. This is multiplication with the dot. We've talked about that. Now I've wrapped it in these parentheses, and I haven't talked about parentheses at all yet, okay? All you need to know right now, and we'll talk about parentheses a lot more later, all you need to know is that when you see parentheses, it just means you have to do what's inside of the parentheses first. That's all it is. These parentheses are just a way in math to force us to do what's inside of this first. It gets first priority when we're doing the actual math, and you'll see in a second what I mean by that. Now on the right hand side I have 4 times b. Notice there's no dot here. I could write it with a dot inside, that would be fine. But in algebra, when you put a letter and a number together, it means multiplication. So here what we have is b times b. We're going to do it first inside the parentheses. We get that answer. We add 3 to it. And whatever this comes out to be, we want to make sure that it's equal to 4 times the variable b. The question is, what is the value of b that satisfies that? Okay, so again, you don't know how to solve equations yet. This is essentially an equation. I haven't taught you how to solve equations. So there's a way to do it to get the answer and to solve for it. But here we're just kind of guessing and checking just to kind of give you the basic idea. So let's check what happens if b is equal to 0. We'll just take a few numbers. What happens? Okay, well, on the left-hand side, this stuff here, we're going to open that parentheses up, and it's going to be 0 times 0. And then we'll have the plus 3 out here. And on the right-hand side, it'll be 4 times, and I'll put the dot here to make sure you understand, b is equal to 0. See, if I put the 4 and when you're writing the letter next to a number, that's not confusing at all. But if I didn't put the dot right here, then I would have a 4 next to a 0. It would look like the number 40. So when you're writing numbers together that are multiplied, you probably should put that dot there to make sure that it's clear. So all we did was plug in the value of 0 into both of these locations. And let's go ahead and solve for it. Here we're doing the inside of the parentheses first. So inside 0 times 0 is 0. Then we have the plus 3 that is still there. On the right-hand side, 4 times 0 is also 0. So now that you have just a single number inside of these parentheses, there's nothing really left to do. You've already done the math, so you can kind of mentally drop the parentheses. 0 plus this 3 is going to just be 3, and on the right-hand side, it's going to be 0. So that is not equal to. So this value here does not work at all. b is equal to 0 is not a valid solution of this guy. All right, so let's go ahead and check and see what happens if b is equal to 1. What's going to happen here? Well, inside the parentheses, we'll have 1 times 1 because it's b times b. And then we'll have the plus 3. And then we'll have 4 times b, which we now know is 1. We're suspecting. We do the inside of the parentheses first, so we'll have 1 times 1 is 1, plus 3 is equal to, on the right-hand side, 4 times 1 is 4. And on the left-hand side, you can drop the parentheses now since you've done what's inside of it. 1 plus 3 is 4, and that is indeed equal to 4. So this checks out. So once you substitute the value of the variable in, you find out that both sides of the equal sign are satisfied. And so you continue on and say, well, this is a solution here. Now notice what I told you before. Here we have variables multiplied by each other, and a lot of times that means more than one value is going to work out. So let's go ahead and see if that's the case. Let's go ahead and try another value here. What if b is equal to 2? Let's just go ahead and quickly try it here. It'll be 2 times 2, because b times b, plus 3 is equal to 4 times 2. 2 times 2 on the inside of the parentheses is 4, plus 3 is equal to 4 times 2 is 8, and 4 plus 3 is 7. That is not equal to 8. Okay, so this value here for b is equal to 2 doesn't work. Okay, but let's just try one more. I'll give you a hint. It's going to work. What if we have b is equal to 3? What's going to happen? Well, on the left it's b times b, so it's 3 times 3, plus 3 is equal to 4 times 3. So 3 times 3 on the inside of the parentheses is 9, plus 3 is equal to 4 times 3 is 12. 9 plus 3 is 12, and that is equal to 12. So that checks out. So this value of b works. I guess we're doing all this work to show that b is equal to 1 makes this equation correct and satisfied, and b is equal to 3 also makes this equation satisfied. And so we found two solutions. We're going to go ahead and stop guessing now. But you can see that sometimes you'll find values that don't work, and sometimes you'll find values that do work. And so that's the bottom line here. We're just getting practice with figuring out what values of these variables satisfy these very simple equations that we're doing here. And so for the concept of a variable, you just plug it in and you evaluate it and see what the answer gives you. Now follow me on to the next lesson. We'll get some more practice with additional topics in algebra.